From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. First, the headlines. American workers are quitting jobs at record rates. U.S. Christian groups push to confirm first Muslim as religious freedom ambassador. Protestors urge end to gender-based violence in Bangladesh. BBC exposes Indian extremists targeting Sikhs. 3.6 million mosques serve Muslims globally. And our top story tonight. A record 4.4 million workers in the United States resigned from their jobs in September. Many Americans left for better working conditions and pay amidst a historic economic recovery. 18 states broke or tied their records for resignation levels. Western states, including Hawaii, Montana, Utah, and Oregon, saw the largest increase according to the Department of Labor. Resignations in the education sector, which accounts for a large share of employment in northeastern states, have risen at the fastest pace since January. Vaccination rates and business reopening timelines have helped spur employer demand for workers in the Northeast. Montana has the largest share of employment in the arts, entertainment, and recreation sector. It recorded the second fastest increase in resignations in the nation. The confirmation of Rashid Hussain as the first Muslim ambassador of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom remains stalled. A confirmation vote by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is pending before a final vote by the full body. The delay is apparently not due to any noticeable anti-Muslim bias or concerns. Except for some extreme Islamophobes, Hussain has garnered the support of a number of notable Christian conservatives. And several religious freedom advocates are pushing for his confirmation. They include the Religious Freedom Institute, the American Jewish Committee, Christian Solidarity Worldwide, and the Anti-Defamation League. Hussain, the son of Indian-American immigrants, served as Associate White House Counsel and former President Barack Obama's U.S. Special Envoy to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC. During his Senate confirmation hearing, Hussain said, America should encourage Muslim-majority countries to protest China's treatment of its Muslim population. Hussain oversaw the Marrakesh Declaration, an effort to ensure protections for Christians and other minority religious groups in OIC member states. President Joe Biden marked the National Day of Mourning with Wampanoag Indians in Massachusetts and Rhode Island on Thanksgiving Day. In a letter to the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe leader, President Biden noted that the community's resilience despite the painful history of broken promises and harmful federal policies. He said his administration is committed to working together to honor tribal sovereignty and strengthen the relationship between the governments. Celebrating its 400th anniversary this year, Thanksgiving dates back to a banquet held by the Wampanoag Indians and the first pilgrims from England in 1621. The Wampanoags feel like their people's history, as they understand it, is being misrepresented. They feel that society makes light of historical trauma. The Wampanoags were weakened by grave raiding pilgrims and a pandemic, yet they saved the settlers, 50% of whom died that first winter, by teaching them to farm in return for trade and protection, only to be murdered in battle, sold into slavery, their land stolen, their language wiped out, their children taken for indentured servants, and the survivors forced to convert to Christianity by the very people who triumphed the right to worship. Two French ministers lashed out at the European Commission after its Commissioner for Equality met a pan-European Muslim youth organization this week. French Junior Minister for Citizenship, Marlene Schiappa, went on Twitter to brand the Forum of European Muslim Youth and Student Organizations, or FAMISO, as an Islamist association. The student network comprises of 33 Muslim youth and student groups across 20 European countries. It has in the past criticized France for its Islamophobic policies targeting Muslims. The French government often brands its critic who question its policies seeking to regulate how French Muslims practice Islam as extremists, Islamists, or Islamo-leftists. Earlier this year, French President Emmanuel Macron's government pressured the Muslim community to adopt a charter of imams. Article 9 of the charter sees denunciation of alleged state racism as an act of defamation. The document also seeks to ban mosques from engaging in political speeches about foreign conflicts. Protesters took to the streets of Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, on Thursday to observe the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. They held banners urging an end to gender-based violence. Many protests have been organized globally to raise awareness about violence against women. According to UN figures, 1 in 3 women have been abused in their lifetime. During times of crises, the numbers rise as seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, humanitarian crises, conflicts, and climate disasters. A new UN report based on data from 13 countries shows 2 in 3 women reported that they or a woman they know experienced some form of violence. It also said fewer than 40% of them seek help. Interpol elected an Emirati general accused of torture as its new president on Thursday. Ahmed Nasser al-Raisi received 68.9% of votes cast by member countries, Interpol said. Human rights organizations fear the agency will be at the risk of exploitation by repressive regimes. The appointment follows generous funding by the UAE for the France-based body. There have been accusations that Abu Dhabi has abused Interpol's system of red notices for wanted suspects to persecute political dissidents. After his election, Raisi did not address the accusations, but said that the UAE has become one of the safest countries in the world. Complaints of torture were filed against the Emirati general in France and Turkey, which is hosting Interpol's General Assembly in Istanbul this week. Sudanese security forces fired tear gas Thursday at thousands of protesters who rallied against a deal reinstating the prime minister. This was after his ouster in a military coup last month. Demonstrators in the capital Khartoum chanted, calling for the regime's downfall. Meanwhile, in the capital's twin city, Omdurman, protesters shouted, "Power to the people." Security forces fired tear gas to disperse protesters in the city, as well as in the central state of North Kordofan and in North Darfur, witnesses said. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan seized power and detained Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok in October 25th. After international condemnation and mass protests, al-Burhan reinstated Hamdok in a deal signed Sunday. More than 1,000 Afghan Shia Hazaras pledged their support to the country's new Taliban rulers. Hazara community elders gathered in Kabul alongside Taliban leaders in a show of support. They insisted the dark period of previous Western-backed governments had ended with the Taliban's return. Afghanistan Hazaras were active participants in the previous pro-US government. Afghans are mostly Sunni, while Hazaras are primarily Shia. Londoners protested outside the British Interior Ministry, chanting, "No more Channel deaths." They called on the government to create safe and legal routes for asylum seekers. The protest came after at least 27 migrants trying to reach England drowned off the northern French coast on Wednesday. Here is Sasha Langveld, campaign assistant at an environmental charity.
We need safer and legal routes for people to come to this country that are fleeing from violence. The idea that people who are fleeing violence are illegal or unwanted is quite, it's just wrong. And the border policies as well that Priti Patel is basically suggesting that will keep us safe and to stop trafficking is going to only worsen the experience for those people fleeing from violence.
Meanwhile, in a makeshift camp near Calais, migrants dream of crossing the Channel. Syrian asylum seeker Ali sat shivering and exhausted on a pebble beach on England's south coast. He was thankful for a new life after he and 30 other migrants were rescued in the Channel. Coming from the eastern Syrian city of Deir ez-Zor, Ali said he had been stranded at sea between England and France for 12 hours on an inflatable boat before he and others were rescued. Britain and France on Thursday called for a coordinated European response to stop people trafficking in the Channel. The BBC on Wednesday exposed a network of fake social media profiles of people claiming to be Sikhs and promoting a divisive narrative. A new report shared exclusively with the BBC identified 80 fake accounts which have now been suspended. Accounts across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were used to promote Hindu nationalism and pro-Indian government narratives. The network used sock puppet accounts controlled by people posing as independent individuals. The network's aim appears to be altering perceptions on important issues around Sikh independence, human rights, and values, according to Benjamin Strick, the author of the report. There's no evidence linking the network directly with the Indian government. About 3.6 million mosques currently serve a rising Muslim population worldwide. That figure was released at an international conference held at the King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture in Itra, Saudi Arabia. The three-day event concluded on Thursday. Participants discussed the historical evolution, meanings, and functions of mosques. According to the Pew Research Center, the number of Muslims worldwide will grow to 2.76 billion, or 29.7% of the world's population, by 2050. Among the countries in need of new mosques is France, where there are only 2,300 mosques serving more than 7 million Muslims. The number of mosques in the United States has increased by 31% to 2,769 between 2010 and 2020, according to a study released last June. That is a result of the steady expansion of Muslims due to immigration and birth rate, per the report. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs,
and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. In one of our in-depth analysis segments, we discussed a recent study. According to this survey, Muslim Americans gave more to charity in 2020 than non-Muslims. Let's watch.
I knew that Muslims are generous people, but I did not realize that Muslims who otherwise struggle economically are more generous than our neighbors. And I'm not saying that. Someone who knows and has done surveys is saying it. And that is Dr. Shariq Siddiqui. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Dr. Shariq Siddiqui is an assistant professor at the Indiana University, and he has recently been co-author of a major report. Let's talk to Professor Siddiqui.
Pleasure to be part of this conversation today. The really exciting news is part of our Muslim American Giving 2021 survey is that while Muslim Americans tend to be are economically poorer than the general population in the United States, they actually give more, and nearly 20 to 30% more than the average household in America. And that's exciting news because it's such a small community. In fact, while Muslims represent only 1.1% of the population, last year they gave $4.3 billion, which means around 1.4% of all individual giving in the country last year. And this is an exciting news, and for a long period of time, what the other interesting piece about this is that 85% of all of that givings remains in the United States. While Muslims are a diaspora community, they give 15% outside to causes all over the world, like everybody else in the United States. But 85% largely stays in the country, largely focused around areas of poverty relief here in the US.
That's amazing. General impression which I might have was that Muslims are giving more because they are facing more disaster around the world, Somalia and Afghanistan and other places. But you are saying that majority of our contributions stay in the United States. What is the nature of these contributions in the United States?
Sure. So in the United States, Muslims give to houses of worship, masajid. But interestingly enough, Muslims give less to houses of worship than any other faith community. And prior research from Institute for Social Policy and Understanding has also kind of validated that. In fact, Muslims only give 24% of their giving that they give within the Muslim community to their houses of worship, as compared to 51% of the general American household. So Muslims give to houses of worship, to the masjid, the Islamic centers, but at lower rates. Where they give at higher rates are issues of domestic poverty. So hungry in your local community, the poor in your local community, and so on. They give higher rates to civil rights, not just civil rights for the Muslim community, but for civil rights for other communities. For example, Muslim support for Black Lives Matter is amongst the highest compared to other faith communities. And then the third area that really stood out for 2020 was COVID relief. Muslims give nearly double than the average American household towards causes impacted by COVID. So for example, if you've lost a job, Muslims are more likely to help that person with their economic circumstances during COVID. If someone is hungry and needed food during the COVID pandemic, Muslims were more likely to give money towards that. If we need research related to healthcare, that was an area. So these are some causes. So these three areas really stood out. Civil rights, COVID relief, and domestic poverty relief were really important drivers of Muslim giving, which represents 85% of Muslim giving remains in the United States.
That's amazing. It validates some of the information which I had anecdotally. For example, the ACLU, they wanted to partner with us in a press conference because within 24 hours or a couple of days of Muslim ban, they raised more than $24 million. Probably not by all Muslims, but probably Muslims were donating as well. Same thing happened in a Chicago Food Depository. I was helping a couple of times, and they told us Muslim charity to Chicago Food Depository is number one when it comes to donation of protein and when it comes to largest number of cans collected. So what is driving these numbers?
Sure. One of the interesting things that is remarkable about this study is that Muslims are equal opportunity givers, meaning that Muslims are just as likely to give to Muslim-led causes as they are to causes that are led by secular or people of other faiths. And what this tells us about this group, largely if you look at, we researched on motivations of giving, and ultimately Muslims wanted to help people that were less fortunate, and compassion was the number one driver of Muslim philanthropy. And so when we think about that, Muslim Americans, they look at the problem they want to solve, look around to see who is best equipped to solve that problem and who's willing to engage with them. And then they connect and make those donations. So organizations like ACLU, organizations like your local food charities and pantries who are engaging and connecting with Muslims are more likely to be recipients of donations, because Muslims, Americans are looking to give to whomever they can to further the cause of social equity, social justice, and to alleviate poverty. I think the second part to your question is that in reality, one of the pieces that we found is that Muslims that happen to be more practicing or more that show that they are more religious are more likely to give than compared to people that are less religious in terms of praying and other forms. And what that suggests is that because in Islam, there's this really important emphasis of giving charity towards poor, giving charity towards people in your communities and to where you live. I think those things are kind of sort of coming through and are part of our findings.
This is simply amazing. I wish more of America will know about these things which Muslims are doing. But one of the things you mentioned is that Muslims in America gave more to Black Lives Matter movement as compared to other faith communities. While most of the Blacks are Christians, what are the reasons for Muslim community to be giving more for Black Lives Matter causes?
Absolutely. So as you know, Muslim Americans are only 1% of the population, but are highly diverse. African Americans, Arabs, South Asians make up a lot, and Latinos make a big part of the population. And within Muslim Americans, African Americans are a large component. So one driver of this is the fact that Muslims, there are many African Americans within the Muslim community in the United States. So that's one. The other thing that we find is that there is a realization that the systemic racism that exists in America, that Black Lives Matter is pushing to fight against, will help all Americans. So it doesn't matter whether you're Black or brown or white or whatever your causes may be. Black Lives Matter, even though it articulates the cause of Black people in America, they're exposing broad systemic racism that applies to all. So I think there are those three factors. One, within Muslim community, there are a large proportion are African American, and there is this belief that treatment of people who happen to be Black is wrong. There is this realization that there's this systemic racism, and this impacts all of us. And then finally, in Islam, there is this theological connection between equality and equity and anti-racism that is also speaking to some of this support.
Professor Siddiqui, one of the questions I would like to ask you is, have you seen across the ethnic communities within Muslim community, how is the distribution? Are they equally generous, or there are some more generous than the others?
Sure. So I think that's a really important question. We aren't seeing at this stage, we've been looking through the data, but we haven't seen variations in giving based on ethnicity, whether you're African American, Arab, South Asian, Latino, and so on. What we are seeing across the board are similarities in motivations of giving, compassion, empathy, and so on. And we're seeing across the board connections with engagement around domestic poverty and civil rights. So we haven't seen major changes depending on ethnicity at this stage.
Well, Professor Rashid Hussain, thank you so much for your work. Tell us a little bit about your institution.
Thank you. Really excited about this work. The Muslim Philanthropy Initiative is part of the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. We're the first school of philanthropy in the world, and focuses on upskilling and building up Muslim philanthropy across the globe through training, education, research, and convening. And so we've been very excited that we are doing this annual survey in partnership with Islamic Relief USA that will sort of look at the size, scope, and motivations of Muslim giving on one side. We've been partnering with Muslim Legal Fund of America to look at the challenges that Muslim nonprofit organizations face in America. We've also doing some research on zakat and sadaqah and waqfs, and so on. And we're also working with the John Templeton Foundation in building a network of Muslim philanthropists. So, using research, we've also partnered with the Zakat Foundation Institute to sort of create a fellowship program where Muslims from all over the world can sort of get a master's program at the School of Philanthropy. We've added courses on Islam to our curriculum. So I teach a course on Muslim philanthropy at the graduate level. Dr. Abbas Barzigar teaches a class on Muslim humanitarianism. And there's actually a website that our students have produced called muslimhumanitarianism.org. In addition to that, we also provide training. We have been at the Lilly School, we have something called the Fundraising School. It's a professional development school. And we've been training nonprofit practitioners all across the world for 40 years. We train around 7,000 people every year. And so we've been spending time taking this training to Muslim populations and have had a really successful run there. So really focus on research, education, training, and convening power of the institution, and sort of highlighting the work that Muslims are doing, finding ways in which Muslim nonprofits can be better, and ultimately sort of helping build the broader field of philanthropy. We have a really important project called Pluralism and Philanthropy, where we're trying to see how philanthropy can be more equitable, and we're drawing on Muslim theology and past Muslim practice to sort of help inform these conversations. So it's an exciting opportunity for us. We've grown incredibly. It's probably one of the largest research teams studying Muslims in one institution. We have a team of around 20 people that are working on either grassroots community research or on these big picture questions, and just really excited about the work that we're doing and highlighting some really interesting sort of understudied areas. Muslims, we don't know enough about Muslims, even though Muslims globally are 1.6 billion people. In the United States, they're very scrutinized, small minority, but we don't know enough. And so we're really excited to sort of move the needle on that knowledge so that we learn more about how Muslims give, how Muslims smile, how Muslims engage in civic action. One of the things that we don't know about Muslims is that Muslim definitions of philanthropy are broader. Smiling is considered to be charity. If you're about to say and do something and you find that that's going to cause harm, you don't do that. And the implications of this broader definition of theology is profound, because it allows us to engage with more people in the act of philanthropy rather than focusing on the very rich. And so these are some of the things that we're working on.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Rashid Siddiqui, for being with us and for your work. And I look forward to seeing the study of how Muslims smile.
Thank you so much for including me in this conversation and for the work that you do for all of us. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum, good night, and have a great weekend.